So about 2 weeks ago, I had the realization that I am not a good person at the end of the day. I just lived my life thinking that I'm not hurting anyone, I make my contributions to society, I'm minding my own business, therefore I must be inherently good. I must be a good person. It kind of reminds me of like how all of us, including your own uncle, when it comes to driving, we believe that we are above average, right? We think that we're above average drivers. So if everyone's above average, then who's below average? You and me. We're not as good at driving as we think we are, okay? But if you've ever driven in New York City or on the highways outside of Nova, the Washington, D.C. area, then you begin to think, how in the world did any of these folks pass their driver's license exam and test? I digress. Point being, most of us, we think that we are a good or a nice person, but are we really? Are we actually a kind soul, a good intentioned individual? Are we? Then again, what really makes a person good, kind, or even nice? It's all very subjective, right? We can agree upon that. Your definition of what makes someone good might not align with my definition of what makes someone good. So with that in mind, I asked myself the other day, objectively, on a quantifiable scale, what makes me good? Then I realized, after thinking about it, showering and thinking about it some more, that I'm actually not. Hence the title of the video. I'm a piece of crap. Quite literally. A stinky, stale, dry, fossilized turd that's been sitting in the sun for 2 weeks. To paint it in a different picture, it's kind of like binge eating for 3 years straight, gaining a big old belly in the process, and denying that I'm overweight at all, until my pants no longer fit and the truth just smacks me across the nipples on my chest and I realize I'm fat. And in this case, I'm not that good. So why did I think that I was good in the first place? I mean, I donate my clothes to the homeless biannually, like every 5 to 6 months. I pack up a box and ship it off, or I hand it off, or I see someone on the street and I'm like, hey, you look like you could use these pair of shoes or this sweater. To the point where I always forget that I don't have that specific shirt that I like anymore. I go looking for it and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I donated it 2 years ago. But I also volunteer, like sporadically for the less fortunate on days like Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I even financially sponsor a child that lives in a different country to have their basic necessities met, right? These are all nice actions, right? And sure, some might say that because of this, I must be a good person. But to me, right, my own subjective opinion and definition, I still feel like I'm not a good person. You know, I think about Becky or Bobby, who is evil and mean and a jerk to other people 365 days of the year. But because of a one-time $1 donation when they were going through a McDonald's drive-thru that they gave by mistake or on accident, thinking it was an add-on soft serve cone, now they think of themselves as a nice or a kind person. Is that how it works? You're evil, you're a jerk, you're mean, you have an attitude whenever you talk to people, but because you do one nice thing, are you allowed to really label yourself as a good person? Makes you wonder, right? Or are you good because you give your family a phone call once a year? And that call is only when you need something. Speaking of which, it's like, Mama, can you wire me $1,000? I'm running low. I've been spending it all doing this and that. All jokes aside, the point that I'm trying to get across here is just because you think that you are a good person, it does not necessarily mean that you are a good person. Let that sink in real quick. In terms of me and my own journey, no, I'm not good. In fact, I'm a dirtbag. Case in point, in my life, I've upset a lot of people throughout the years. I am the worst when it comes to responding to messages or texts or even returning calls. I see it and I'm like, I'll get to it 5 minutes later after I'm done driving when I get home. And the next thing you know, it's been 5 months and I still haven't responded. And I'm sure the person on the other line is probably like, yo, this guy is rude. He's intentionally ignoring me. He hates me. I'm just not a good person. You see what I'm trying to get at, right? I've got into plenty of fights when I was a kid. Growing up wasn't the easiest, so I always took out my anger and frustrations through these fights. I also avoid opportunities for fellowship whenever I can. Like I dodge them as if it's PE class and there's balls flying at me. I'm like, you want to go do this? No, I'm good. You want to go to Bible study? No, I'm good. And I'm also really good at making friends and terrible at keeping friends. I'm just a really bad friend overall, okay? They say you should ask yourself, if you were someone else, right? If you were that poster board right there, would you want to be friends with who you are? And in my case, absolutely not. You should not be my friend. I am not a good one. And the list, oh, it goes on. If you think it's that short, no, honey. Look at this. Here are some of the stuff that I'm struggling with currently. Sometimes I also have the tendency to be selfish and I put my needs before others. I'm judgmental. No commentary necessary on that one. I get annoyed and irritated easily due to small things like the weather, it's being too hot, or the traffic, it's bumper to bumper, variables that are out of my control. Why am I like this? Right? I had this epiphany 2 weeks ago and I was just like, man, it's so sad. It's better if I just turn a blind eye and pretend that I'm good. But I just can't do that. I just can't say, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm naive, I'm good. It's just like, I understand who I'm looking at when I see my own reflection in the mirror. And it's like, bro, you're terrible. So why this moral dilemma all of a sudden? In a different season in my life, I used to do ministry work full time. And with that in mind, there's a brother of mine in that chapter that recently passed away at such a young age too. And that event gave me reason to pause and reflect on what I'm doing right now, who I am, and on my old self, and the journey that I used to be on of doing good to be good, to see good in the world. They say that you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. In other words, you got to be the good that you want to see. After much reflections, it put my priorities in order. And I started to ask the questions, am I living my purpose? You see, I know my purpose at the end of the day, but why? Why am I avoiding it? Am I good? How am I making life better for those that are around me? For much too long, for the past few years, I just lived my life the way I wanted to. And while doing so, I just assumed that I was a good person. In actuality, I'm really not. I'm really not a good person. Just because I think I'm good, it doesn't mean that I am good. So now the truth is aligning with who I really am and I'm not good. Has anyone else thought about this before? Because something tells me, right, that this is more common than I imagine. You know, waking up one day and thinking, dude, I am not a good person, but I want to be a good person. What really makes a person good? And what makes a person bad? Basically, that's the video. The realization and confession that I am a piece of crap. So where do I go from here? Where do we go from here? I'll be honest, I'm not sure. But I know from my time volunteering at AA, admitting is the first step. I am not a good person, but I'd like to be, and I want to be. So we'll see what happens, you know? We'll see what happens next. And we'll catch you in the next video.